Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the O Gaming and Nation Wars. We'll be going into the interview very shortly between the two team captains. I believe we'll have 100% less Francais in this one. So, that'll be nice for those of you that do not understand French. My French is a little rusty, unfortunately. Greg, did you ever do French at school, or is that just a UK thing?
No, I did Spanish. We had the option to do Spanish or French, but I mean, it's high school language. I took 4 years of Spanish, and I like know how to say hi, maybe.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah. It was
not a big multilingualist.
A couple of years ago, I think, I actually went to Paris to deal with Pomfetude and talk to them about Iron Squid and things like that. And I was able to order Jus d'Orange, which was fantastic. A little bit of orange juice, it was great. Now, we're going into an interview here. It's going to be with Snute initially, so we're going to switch it over to the Snute interview, which should be right here. Snute or Snooter, whichever you prefer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What is the correct pronunciation?
Snute.
Snooter. Okay, I will bear that one in mind.
Snute.
Snooter. Is that about right, or am I still screwing it up?
No, that's pretty good.
Cool, excellent. I'm glad to hear that Norway will not be hating me more than it already does. So, Snooter. You are, of course, the team captain of the Norwegian team, which also features TargA and I believe the correct pronunciation would be Eiki. Am I correct?
Yeah. Eiki.
Okay, cool. Can you tell me a little bit about Eiki? Because he's not a player that we, in the general Starcraft scene, know a huge amount about.
Yeah. He's been around in the Norwegian scene for quite a while, but in 2012, for example, he would often be overshadowed by Notissimus, who was, he used to be the best Protoss player in Norway for a while. But since Notissimus retired from gaming, then Eiki has, taken the place as Norway's best Protoss player. So, yeah, I would say he's the best Protoss in Norway, and we haven't really seen him all too much outside of Norway, but he does also play in some online cups, and he was actually not too far away from qualifying for WCS Europe as well. Got some pretty good runs in the bracket, so he's a very good player, I think.
Now, can you explain your decision to actually take 2 Zergs into your team? Because most of these national teams have taken one of each race.
Well, it's kind of a result of how the Norwegian scene is. We don't really have any good Terrans anymore. And I think we had 5 players that could be voted in, and 4 of them were Zergs, and we had only 1 Protoss. So we didn't really have a lot of a choice. So, if this was a 5-man team, then it would be even worse. We would have 4 Zergs and 1 Protoss. So that's, that's just how the Norwegian scene looks.
Oh, that's interesting to know, actually. Could you tell us a little bit about Norwegian sort of national lands, if anything? Of course, we know that Sweden has DreamHack, and we know about Assembly in Finland, but what about Norway? What do you have over there?
Norway has a lot of smaller local lands, like about 200-300 people. StarCraft 2 is not that big, but we do have some competitions regardless. So the most active players in Norway actually travel all around the country to play in these events, because the prize pools are quite big, and as everyone knows, Norway is a very expensive country. So if you're going to be a pro gamer in Norway, then you better go to those lands and actually try to win them. We don't have anything big like DreamHack, for example. We used to have the Gathering back in, I think it was in 2012, where we got players from around Europe. But besides that, we haven't really had any big international competitions at the scale of DreamHack. So it's not really like Sweden. It's more like the other typical European country scenes that are a bit smaller, but still have some cool lands with a decent amount of prize money.
Cool, good to know. Now, can you say anything about your opponents? Do you guys feel confident going up against them?
I think it can be real close, because all of the players on the Polish team are quite good.
Yep.
I know that both TargA and I feel quite confident against Diestar or Diestar. Mana can be a bit tricky at times, but I think his PvC hasn't been as good as his PvT, so that's a pretty good match for Norway. But Nerchio is going to be tough as always, because he has some of the best CVC in the scene. So a lot of this is going to come down to the CVCs between the aces, I think.
Who would you consider to be your ace on the team? Would that actually be you, or are you nominating somebody else for that?
I think it's fairly close between TargA and I, so I'm not really going to take. Yeah, I think we're both about even.
Fair enough. You, towards the end of 2013, were expressing definitely some disappointment with your performance, and you were, let's just say, quite sort of vocally depressed, even, when it comes down to your results and your future in StarCraft 2. Now we're in 2014. How are you feeling about the year ahead?
I'm still thinking about it some. I might quit if I'm not improving, but I'm going to give it at least some more time to see where it's going. But you know, it's not as bad as I make it sound. I'm still able to put up decent performances, even if I'm not getting to the level of players such as Hyun or top Koreans. Then I can still do decently, and I'm still having fun with the game. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, well,
Don't
Snute,
have
thank
to
you
worry
very
about
much
me.
for
It's
the
fine.
interview today, and we are going to switch on over to talking to Nerchio, and I believe we're going to hand you over to the French casters for their interview. So best of luck, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you as the victor after this series.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Some words from Snute, the captain of the Norwegian team, and we're going to be bringing in Nerchio momentarily. They're just going to do a quick swap over so Snute can go and talk to the French, and we can go and talk to Nerchio. I'm going to be joining that call momentarily. All right, and we should be on the line now with the captain of the Polish team, that being Acer's Nerchio. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Hey there, how are you doing? How are things going for you over there?
Yeah, everything is going fine, and I'm kind of excited for the upcoming match more than a lot of things that I've done in the last few months in StarCraft 2.
Good to know. So, you've actually put yourself out first against TargA, which is a little unusual for the captain. We actually saw in the previous war, it was a case of the captain sort of coming out second to try and rally the team, but you decided to lead from the front. Why did you decide to open up here on Derelict Watcher?
I mean, I might be called captain, but we decided together with everybody, you know, from Team Poland, that the best decision is that I start the nation war, and we expected Snute to be first from Norway, but I guess they're a little bit similar with TargA, so that's not a big deal for us.
Do you consider ZVZ to be a strong matchup for you right now?
I would say yes, but I'm stronger in like best of threes or best of fives. Best of one is a little bit, I guess, random. So I'm a little bit afraid, but I should be able to do that.
Now, you saw the previous nation war, no doubt, where Spain went out rather unceremoniously. They ended up getting stomped 3-0 there by Russia. So I've got to ask, if you're able to make your way through Norway, are you concerned at all about the Russian lineup?
Well, yeah, I think we're more concerned about Russia than Norway, but we focus on the first match for now.
All right. Anything else that you would like to say to the fans out there before we kick off your war against Norway?
Yeah, thanks for cheering for us, and we'll do our best to win the nation war.
Okay, fantastic. Nerchio, thank you very much for your time. We'll, of course, be handing you over to the French casters for your interview before you begin in your matchup against TargA, and hopefully we'll get to see you again in the winner's interview after this war.
Yeah, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Nerchio. And there we go, the captain of the Polish team. Well, this is going to hopefully be a little bit closer than what we saw previously, because it was a bit of a stomp with Titan absolutely destroying the Spanish team completely. But this looks a little bit more even, and Idra, as a Zerg player yourself, I'd love to know your opinion on Nerchio versus TargA. Which way do you think this is going?
I'd say Nerchio is absolutely the better player, but TargA, I haven't seen TargA play in quite some time, but all of the games I've seen him play ZVZ, actually, I think he went for a Baneling all-in. Like the long extended, get 2 gases, wait until your opponent's lair is almost halfway done, and then you just keep rallying Banelings at them and keep attack moving Zerglings in. And it sounds kind of silly and simple, and it sounds like the kind of thing that you should be able to hold off if you know it's coming and you're good at defending it. But it's actually very, very difficult to be. I don't know, Banelings are just very, very cost efficient when they're on the aggressive, unless you're really well turtled up. And that was a while ago, so I'm not sure if he's still going to play that way. He's been in WCS. He's reached a lot more exposure than he had previously. So he's probably had to diversify it a bit. And Nerchio is a very smart player. I'm sure he would be able to deal with that if he plays too predictably. So I doubt we'll really see that from him, but we could. And one way or the other, he is the type of player who will do really weird stuff to try and catch his opponent off guard. He's willing to play very aggressive and cheesy. So something weird is going to happen for TargA to win. I would say Nerchio is absolutely the better player, but TargA is completely capable of making something weird happen.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I think, though, if Nerchio actually takes this matchup, he could just roll the whole thing. I know that Nerchio, historically, his ZVP was really strong. I don't know if that's changed over the recent months. We haven't seen a huge amount out of him, so it's always a little bit difficult to know. But we do have Eiki sitting there as the unknown in the Norwegian lineup. It's hard to say just how good he really is. We don't know if he could take on a player of the caliber of Nerchio. And even if he can, will he then be able to deal with someone like Diestar or Mana?
I mean, he is a complete unknown. It's hard to say. But if your claim to fame is being the best Protoss in Norway now that the previous best Protoss in Norway has retired, I mean, no offense to Norway, but they haven't produced a ton of amazing players.
No.
And if he were that good, he would probably have some recognition in the international scene. I'd say him versus Nerchio. I see almost no chance, short of like something really, really lucky happening early on. And Nerchio would be aware of that. Nerchio is a very smart player. Nerchio, I don't know, he doesn't get a lot of credit for it, but his mechanics aren't actually fantastic. Like his creep spread, his macro, they're good enough, but they're not amazing. He wins on the back of his decision making. He was considered or thought to be a hacker for so long.
Yeah, he was
when
actually.
He was only succeeding online because he has really, really good star sense, really, really good decision making. He's not the kind of player who really loses too much to stupid stuff. I mean, it happens sometimes. It happens to everyone occasionally. That's just the nature of the game. But him, much less so than a lot of players. So he's not the kind of player who frequently loses to people much worse than him. And especially not in weird ways like that. So I really think it's going to come down to Snute having to take him out. I mean, TargA's capable of it, but I think it'll be Snute, if anything. I really do feel like Nerchio's the best player in this match.
I think you're probably right. It was interesting to kind of reminisce about the days when Nerchio was certainly considered to be a map hacker by certain people. I followed him very early on. I actually cast Nerchio when Nerchio was still playing random. And that was actually crazy because he was pretty good at it, which was shocking. But at that time, yeah, people did think, you know, why is this guy only successful on ladder? Why is he not coming to LAN tournaments? And eventually he did come to LAN tournaments and started winning them. So I think that shut people up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it certainly did. But, I mean, pretty much everyone thought he was a hacker at the time because he played a really funky style. He can be kind of a dick. A lot of people don't like him, so that never really helps your case in anything. And then, like you said, the lack of offline performances, a lot of people really did. But then he started showing up to lands and winning them. After a little bit of a calibration period, everyone takes time to get used to lands.
Absolutely.
But after that, he's been one of the most successful players in Europe ever since then.
Yeah, I would certainly tend to agree.
Is TargA playing this from Australia, or is he back in Europe now?
That's a good question. Didn't TargA just quit his team a couple of days ago, didn't he? He just left Dignitas.
I'm not actually sure. I mean, I know he's not on them anymore, but I'm not sure when it happened.
Yes, that would explain why his clan tag is
an
ass
interesting
to
tag.
mouth. Yes, which is what I assume he means there, but as far as I'm aware, that is not currently a competitive team within the StarCraft 2 scene, so I think he might be pulling our leg on that one, but we're just going to wait for TargA to check his latency, make sure that nothing goes too wrong with that. Hopefully we won't have any lag issues during this tournament. So far it's been going fine. And of course we are playing with European teams, so they're all on the same server. They shouldn't really be worrying too much.
I can't imagine how bad the latency would be playing from Australia to Europe. I mean, maybe it's something weird where they happen to have a good connection
Some
to each
good
other.
route for some reason, yeah, because Korea to
doesn't
Europe
seem
is
like
just awful.
Yeah.
Since the Zotac Cup in NA actually closed, which was certainly very sad, our players have been looking for online tournaments. A lot of them are in Europe, and they don't actually want to play in Europe, and the reason is the lag is so bad that it is enough to severely hamper your ability to actually win. As we saw in the WCS qualifiers, we saw all of the Koreans knocked out in the wildcard qualifiers, which is insane to think about.
Yeah, playing from I mean, I haven't been in Korea for a while, but the last time I was, it was literally at least 300 ping every single game. And I mean, you can deal with some latency if you get used to it. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting comfortable with the delay and,
Yeah.
adjusting your responses and whatnot to the delay that you're going to have to deal with. When it's 300 plus ping, that doesn't really happen. You just can't react in time for some situations. Like, you see a storm and then all the damage is done before your units actually move out of it.
Yeah, it seems like there are certain races that do better in those laggy environments than others, and of course there are certain builds that can help you actually play that, but yeah, it can definitely be a problem. And I think it's the Great Wall of Lag is what's been keeping Europe safe for the most part in the WCS.
Oh, it certainly helps, because you look at NA to Korea is pretty playable. Korea to Europe really isn't, unless you have some kind of fantastic connection. And I don't know if it's even possible.
We've tried 2 different providers. I believe we're currently on KT in the Axiom house, and we're still having the same issue connecting to Europe as we were with our previous. So I don't know what ISP you would need in Korea to get a good connection to Europe. I don't know if it is even physically possible, as you said. But it does mean that the round of 32 in WCS is very, very interesting, I've got to say, for the Koreans.
Yeah.
Alright, well, here we go. We've managed to spend the time between 6 drones and 15, so there you go. And now we have a spawning pool coming up for Ace and Nerchio in the northeast position in the red trunks, representing Team Poland versus his opponent to the southwest position, both going for identical builds here. From Team Norway, it is TargA in the blue.
Yeah, identical builds, I would say that favors Nerchio, probably. I'm really curious to see if TargA is still going to be doing that Baneling stuff, because it doesn't seem like someone would be doing a little bit of a weird, non-standard, very aggressive build for like all of their time as a professional player, but he did it for a lot longer than you would have expected, to a lot more success than you would have expected, and he's always been fond to Baneling busts in every matchup. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. I'd be very surprised if he's actually going to do that. Both players still just mirroring their build orders, both going for pool first, and on this map, an early 10 pool or something is actually a bit of a threat. It seems like a very big map, it seems kind of counterintuitive, but it turns out your Overlord actually doesn't get there in time to see the hatchery timing, so you don't know what kind of 10 pool it's going to be, and that actually makes it significantly harder to defend. So pool first, not as surprising as it seems on here, and Nerchio has always been a very safe player. He's always preferred pool first and early speedling kind of builds to give himself map control and whatnot. I think that stems from his confidence. He's an absurdly confident player, and he really just doesn't want to lose to anything funny early on. He wants to get it into the mid game and then try and outplay his opponent. And quick Baneling nest from Nerchio. No Baneling nest just yet from TargA. My Skype thing actually covers up the gas. And he does have the gas to afford it, and he still hasn't put it down. That's getting a little bit weird there.
Interesting. I wonder what that gas is for. I mean, there we go. I was going to say, he's still in gas, having taken speed, so he obviously intended to get it at some point, but it is a little bit late. I mean, that's fine, but it does mean the TargA's most likely going to be the defensive player here. If Nerchio wants to apply any aggression whatsoever, that Baneling nest is going to be a little bit late for him otherwise.
Yeah, the first larva round popped from Nerchio. He actually hasn't built... Oh, he's Overlord blocked, so he hasn't gotten to choose if it's going to be circlings or drones yet. It is going to be drones. No circling attack coming out from him. So that late Baneling nest won't hurt TargA whatsoever. Both players probably just headed up to Lair at this point. The third and fourth gases should be coming down.
Yep.
There they go from... Yeah, both players
both
just
sides,
absolutely mirrors from both sides.
Interesting
Oh,
stuff.
never mind. Roach corner from TargA. Canceled his gas. So it's
Okay.
going to be a Roach Bane bust from TargA. And Nerchio is headed up towards 2H Muta.
Alright, well, I mean, this usually goes one of two ways, from what I've seen, and that either the Roach Bane works before the Lair is able to really get a lot of Mutilates out. Never mind, TargA's actually going back into his fourth gas there. So I don't know how much he actually wants to come into this, whether he wants to go to Lair, but he still hasn't actually taken his Lair yet, so that's not going to happen. First blood coming out there.
He built that gas because he saw the circling scout coming from Nerchio.
Oh,
and
then he cancelled again? Alright, sneaky.
Yeah, he didn't want him to see the lack of gas.
Okay.
That's kind of interesting because TargA actually built it in the first place and then canceled it. So I'm not sure if that's indecision or if he wasn't sure if he wanted to go for like a really, really heavy, lots of gas Roach Baneling kind of build or what. But one way or the other, we have 11 Roaches in production.
That we do.
Walking across the map shortly. We only have a single Spine Crawler yet from Nerchio, and his Spire is actually going to be very exposed. It's right out in front there, so that could easily fall to the initial attack, even just from Baneling Splash. And Nerchio still has absolutely no idea what's going on.
Yep, he's going to find out as soon as he leaves the base, of course. He's going to go right under there, and there it is. So let's see the reaction. Immediately 16 lings, but there's a couple of drones in production as well. Spire gets cancelled immediately there by Nerchio. Goes straight into additional spines. 5 spines coming up here at Nerchio's natural.
Headed up to 6. That's around the number. 6, 7, 8. Anywhere in there can work. It's more about the timing. And I'm not sure if he's gotten them up fast enough, because I don't know, that's a lot of roaches and a lot of banelings, and they're going to get there before those additional spine crawlers finish. It's going to be really, really hard for Nerchio to hold this off. You really need some kind of scouting information beforehand. Just putting up the panic spine crawlers on most maps. Actually, he's going to get it up in time.
Yeah, I mean, he'll certainly take some damage initially, but the Banes could do a little bit of damage AoE-wise to these roaches, and here comes the pressure. The spines are now up, so we're going to have to see some pretty damn good connections. Whoa! Banelings, going up on both sides here. And that was most of TargA's Banelings going pop, but it was enough to actually kill all of the spine crawlers bar 1. However, the roach force has been severely depleted. We're down to 7 now. A couple of lings coming in, and Nerchio's drones plus that spine crawler might be enough to push this back.
Yeah, no additional banelings just yet from TargA. He is morphing some right now. If he had those, he would definitely be able to break through here.
Yeah, certainly.
As is, Nerchio can buy himself time. He's repositioning that spine crawler, but I don't know if he actually has the firepower. Because 6, 7 roaches, not a big scary army, but it's still pretty hard to kill off when you don't have any roaches yourself. And that spine crawler is dangerously low now.
Oh, it's down now.
Without the spine crawler, there's no real answer to the banelings here. Nerchio's about to lose all.
Here they are. Oh, there's one good connection. The second does not actually land, and Nerchio may be able to prevent that from going down, but the natural's now forfeit. Nerchio GG's, and a good strong opening there from TargA.
Yeah, without that without the spire, since he actually canceled it, he had no fallback, so he really had to just absolutely stop that rush. There was no half measures there. He had nothing to fall back on. So getting through there. That was pretty good baneling connections for Nerchio. He just didn't really spread the spine crawlers out enough, so the splash damage just did so much. Took out all of those spine crawlers at once.
It was insane to watch that, actually. Just 4 or 5 spines just exploding all at once.
Yeah, if he had actually had the spine crawlers all spread out, so that at most like 2 would take damage from a single baneling blast, I think he would have held that off for sure. But as it was just a little bit too close. And it was weird. I'm not sure why. He didn't even have like a baneling nest there taking up space or anything. He had the entire natural to drop spine crawlers in. In his panic, like, you see those roaches come out, you just want to get the spine crawlers done as quickly as possible, and he wasn't quite thinking clearly. If he had them all spread out, I think he survives that.
Yeah, I think so.
Unfortunately for him.
It was definitely a close game, one way or the other, but it's strange that we should talk about Nerchio's decision-making and then have Nerchio make a bad decision, I suppose, when it comes to the actual defense there, but, well, that's a good, strong opening there for Team Norway. I think a bit of a surprise, maybe an upset for some people, but even Nerchio said it himself. He's not that confident in the best of 1 ZVZ. It could go either way, and it did.
Yeah, that's just the nature of ZVZ. There's lots of silly ways to lose. Banelings are just so volatile early on. Like, TargA didn't even get the best baneling connection, so it's honestly pretty sloppy from him. He walked in with like 9 or 10 of them within like the explosion radius of Nerchio's banelings and lost all of them really inefficiently. It was just the mistake on the other end from Nerchio that kind of saved him. It just so happened that when all of them blew up, they were also in range of a lot of the spine crawlers.
Yeah. So they took at least 3 or 4 of them out there. Yeah, if those spines had been slightly further back, then that would never have happened, and I think that fight would have definitely gone the other way. But, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and as you can see, TargA is now rolling forward, and he'll be going up against either Mana or Diestar in the next matchup. If you happen to be captain of Team Poland at this stage, who would you send?
It's kind of hard to say. I don't know. I remember back when they were more active and there were lots of lands going on in Europe, pretty much every single game they played, Mana would just 2-base Immortal all in against him, and he would win most of them. And Nerchio, pretty well known for complaining about balance, just saying that kind of thing was pretty unstoppable, kind of silly. I'm not sure if he still feels that way, if Mana would still do that. I haven't seen much from Mana at all recently. He hasn't been performing up to the standards that he kind of set for himself before. So I'm not sure what to expect. But I would say Mana has to be the better of the two, even if he has been underperforming. I would save Mana for last, put out Diestar, and maybe try and make something happen early on. I don't know. With Nerchio out of the way, this is going to be pretty tough because Snute is still there, and with Nerchio down, I don't know if there's anyone you're comfortable playing against Snute. They're certainly capable of beating him, but to get through TargA's whatever build TargA has planned for the next game, and then to have to fight Snute after that, it gets pretty tough.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was really expecting better from Nerchio. Putting him out first was kind of a mistake on Poland's side, I think.
It
Should've
did
saved
leave him
until you had a
exposed
better idea what was going on.
unnecessarily. I think it looked like TargA had prepared quite well for his style there. Obviously, they must play together quite a lot. They'll run into each other on ladder. And TargA's no slouch, as was proven there, even though that was a bit... It was, you know, a bit of a sledgehammer approach, I suppose, to attacking the natural. It did the job. So,
Yeah, well, I mean,
if it works...
that's what TargA does, though, and Poland has to be aware of that. TargA has enough exposure now that there's no excuse for being unaware of his style. And putting Nerchio out first when there's not only as a good Zerg and Snute to ZVZ, but also TargA with that style of ZVZ, that's just really an unnecessary risk for someone who's probably your best player. I think they should have led with Diestar mana for sure. But, I mean, that's all in the past, so now they have to deal with that. I would say Diestar and pick a really, really Terran-favored map and hope that that works out. And then if anything else, you just hope for mana to all kill at the end of it, because I'd say he's the more capable of the two. We'll have to see.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. And I don't know if you'd want to send out Mana next. It's certainly not his best matchup. He's historically a PvT master and was incredibly good at that, even in Wings of Liberty. Still is pretty good at it. It does, of course, help that PvT is leaning towards the Protoss at the moment. But it's... I mean, you could send him out, and I think he'd be pretty confident against anybody, but his performance lately has not been so great. And the last time I cast Diestar was actually Wings of Liberty, so I've got to say I don't really have a frame of reference to assess his performance lately.
Yeah, I'm not too sure where he stands. Another big thing to take into consideration, I kind of mentioned, is the maps. I'm not entirely sure what the whole map pool is, but if there is one map that's really horrendously bad for ZVT or ZVP, then obviously you would want to just play for that, because I think it's worth using that to get TargA out of the way. Because TargA is just he's so unpredictable, you don't really want to risk something versus him. Again, that's just why I don't really like the option to put Nerchio out first. So if you could just use a really bad Zerg map to get him out of the way, and then play against Snute, who may be the better player, but a bit more predictable. Like, Mana can come out with some kind of cheesy build, and he can probably play mind games with Snute. Playing mind games with TargA is pretty dangerous, because it's hard to know what he's going to do, and he could mess up your build by just going all in at any point.
Yeah.
So, kind of depends on the map pool as well. I don't know. This is part of the reason I wish we had more Nation Wars and even more team leagues. There's just a whole lot of mind games, and it adds more aspects to the whole competition beyond just the game itself.
I absolutely agree when it comes to the team league situation. And hopefully we will see some of the team leagues making a comeback in 2014. We're still waiting to hear whether or not there will be a new SC2L, whether or not there'll be a new Ace of Team Story Cup, and of course the GSTL is right now very much, I wouldn't even say up in the air, I'd say dead and buried and waiting for some kind of zombie-like resurrection. And that's not really going to happen with the current number of teams available in Korea unless the Casper teams suddenly decide after Pro League's over, hey, we'd love to play in GSTL, which would actually make it the best GSTL in history if they did that. But we will see. It seems unfortunately unlikely.
Yeah, it does. It's very strange because team leagues were always such a big thing in Brood War in Korea in general. I mean, we still see that with Pro League, but that's particularly in Korea because that's what allowed big sponsors to get behind it. It was easier to slap your name on a team and then just have the team succeed along with your name, than to try and deal with individual players or try and garner fame from like the individual leagues. Because it's kind of a bad bet to put all your money on one player in an individual league. Whereas if you put it on a team, you're going to get exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
One way or the other. So I don't know. I'm really surprised. I don't know why GSTL never caught on so much, but I mean, it definitely didn't. I've never watched it very religiously. It just never really had the appeal. I'm not sure why.
It was mainly an airtime problem, in my opinion. And it was even difficult for me to watch, and having a team in that, I wanted to try and keep my eyes on that. I recall the situation at the Red Bull LAN when I was watching Axiom Acer in the finals was 3 days without sleep to watch that. That was the only way. Even though I was going to try and sleep, I was too nervous anyway, so that wasn't going to happen. But to actually watch all of that, that was the only way to pull that off. So that, as you can see, kind of limits the viewership appeal. And then they put the VODs behind a paywall as well, so that made things even worse for people. But it's a shame, because GSTL lineups up until the last season were incredibly good.
They were. It was before Pro League really started to get running. It was definitely the pinnacle of team competition.
Yeah, certainly.
In like all of Starcraft 2, and like I said, team competitions were such a big thing. But Nation Wars as well. That's actually something I think is, if anything, even more neglected in Starcraft 2.
Oh yeah.
Because that was such a big deal in Brood War. That was basically how you got started as a new player because there were not a whole lot of sponsored teams. Esports obviously was much less developed, so getting into a sponsored team wasn't an easy way to get recognition or a whole lot of attention or get any money out of it. But the Nation Wars, there was a whole lot of pride attached to that. It was all run by WGT, and it was just like a constant ongoing thing. And I don't know, it just mattered a lot, and it was a really big thing to up-and-coming players to get onto their national team, represent their country and all that. There's a lot more national pride in general back in Brood War. Not sure why that didn't really transfer over.
I think it just became foreigner versus Korean very, very quickly. I
don't know. We had plenty of that too. I don't know. Brood War was the start of foreigner versus Korean. I'm not sure if we can claim that.
That is kind of true, although you have to bear in mind, I suppose, in Brood War that the instance of a foreigner beating a Korean in a best-of series was a lot rarer.
That's true. It's kind of harder to care about it when it's already a foregone conclusion.
All right, well, it looks like they've picked Diestar, so we're going to see a Terran versus Zerg on Polar Knight here.
Yeah, on Polar Knight, so they did pretty much go with, I don't know, some Zergs are okay with this map. I can't imagine how. It's just so hard to take a third. It's such a short rush distance. If Terran gets set up at their third, they can just rally units at you, and they're at a high ground above one of your bases in like 3 seconds. So they did kind of just go with Diestar, have him put him on a really, really good map, and hope that he can take out TargA. This is going to be tough for TargA. But on the other hand, TargA's the kind of player, he'll just do a 2-base Roach Bane all in if you give him a map where the third base is not particularly accessible. So this could backfire in that kind of circumstance.
It's definitely a possibility. So, to the north position, ladies and gentlemen, playing for Team Norway in the blue trunks, playing Zerg, it is TargA. Versus his opponent to the south position, in the annoyingly similar purple trunks, playing for Team Poland. Also, of course, representing the Terran race, it is Millennium's Diestar.
So it's pretty easy to pigeonhole TargA as just like a very cheesy player because he does that a lot. But it's important to keep in mind that he can play a macro game as well. He's had tournament runs where, I forget what tournament it was, but he went through, he beat some Koreans, and then he ended up having like a really, really close series with MMA or something. And a lot of really big macro Mutiling Bane ZVTs alongside all of his all-ins and stuff. So I would expect him to Roach Bane all-in or do something funky here. But you can't completely disregard his macro game. He's a pretty decent player in his own right when it comes to that. And Diestar is just really an unknown for me. Like, I know his name. He's been around for a long time. He's been competitive for a long time. But I can't remember the last time I actually saw him play.
He's been around for a ridiculously long time. The last time I cast him must have been Wings of Liberty, and the first time I cast him was Wings of Liberty Beta. It was that long ago. And he was actually very, very active in a lot of the European online cups and things like that. And he was getting very far as well. He was one of the stronger Terran players in Europe at the time. We're going to see a CC first here from Diestar on Polar Knight, the hatchery for TargA. No pull as of yet for him, so looks like we're going to see a very late pull from TargA. Both of these guys setting up for a slower start.
Yeah, he does end up going for, I believe that was a 16 pool. And this is one of the maps where you can actually just delay your pool by a little tiny bit, and your Overlord gets there to see the 14cc, and you can drop a third hatchery without having to drone scout. That does leave you a little bit exposed against certain rushes, so basically it's proxy 2 racks. Yep. But TargA not opting to do that and actually putting down a gas right away, so he will get Speedling out. That makes it a little bit easier to go into a Roach Baneling all-in if he wants to. Gives him map control, scares the Terran a bit. So that is still leaving that opportunity open. But yeah, like you said, Diestar's been around for a long time, and back when he was getting a little bit more attention, he was like the definition of a textbook Terran player. There was nothing at all strange about him. Just completely by the book macro games. And players like that don't tend to change. Like, sometimes cheesy players will diversify. They'll still cheese every once in a while, but they will also learn macro games. It's pretty rare for a macro textbook player to then start cheesing much more. Not sure why, psychology of it and whatnot. Yeah. But it's pretty rare. So I would expect Diestar to play pretty by the book here. And, well, TargA, we'll see.
Yeah, can't even say it for TargA. You're definitely right, though, as to the way that those players tend to go. Heart's a really good example of that, actually. He cheesed a huge amount, and then he made that switch to macro, and it confused the hell out of people for about 3 tournaments, and he ended up getting high places as a direct result of that. And it seems like a lot of cheesy players like to go in that general direction, and they like to have that reputation as a cheeser because it means that the opponent ends up playing too safe, and then they go super greedy and just get rolled over. But no, I don't expect to see anything crazy out of Diestar, and we're not seeing anything crazy out of Diestar. It couldn't be more by the book at this point. He goes nice and safe. He starts to build his wall, bunker with 2 Marines in it, and then I expect to see Hellions coming out of Diestar momentarily.
Something fun's going to happen, though, because we have Speedling. Oh, and there goes the Baneling nest. TargA never took drones off gas, so he's just going straight for a Ling Bane bust off of 1 gas. So this is going to be the really, really fast variation. We actually have a 3rd CC already from Diestar. So this is either going to be really, really good or really, really bad. He's either going to hold off the initial Baneling explosion and then just win easily because he's going to have 3 orbitals running, or the Banelings are going to connect, the Hellions are going to get surrounded, and then he's going to fall over and die because he has nothing else.
All of those are possible.
This is exciting.
Yeah, I like TargA. He means that these games end fairly early, and they end one way or the other. That's nice. There's not too much wasted time in the TargA game, by the looks of it. More Lings on the way. Already 20 on the field, and 18 more to follow that one up. Huge amounts of Zerglings being brought in here. The Hellions are not actually going to spot any of that. They did jump onto one of those Xel'Naga towers, but they didn't see anything because TargA went to the other side. And that Xel'Naga was actually not even taken by Diestar. It was blocked by those 2 Lings, so he hasn't seen a damn thing. And this is very, very clearly not prepared for a Baneling bust.
No, not at all. Diestar just now realizing, just now putting up extra bunkers, that is not going to play any part in this. It's all going to be down to the Hellion control. But 6 Hellions against that many Zerglings with Banelings in mineral lines. Although he is going to be able to wall off and sit behind that. All of the SCVs that is natural, absolutely dead.
Yes.
It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be able to hold on his main. And 3 Banelings actually completely wasted there for TargA. That was questionable.
Quite surprising that he did that, considering he knew that 3 Banelings would not kill a supply depot, but he went into that anyway. He has completely ransacked the natural, so that's nice. The bunker is actually going to get salvaged immediately. And he's made things a little bit difficult, certainly for Diestar, but the thing is that even if you kill all of those, you still have triple mule, so if you don't actually kill your opponent here, you can still end up being behind, even though he's killed 12 workers.
Yeah, short of this next bust actually killing Diestar basically wins, because they're actually on equal harvesters right now, but Diestar has 3 orbital mules running. Diestar, however, only has those Hellions, and TargA is going to go for one last attack here with 5-6 Banelings.
Oh man, Diestar supply blocks.
Oh, that's not so good. He has the 6 Hellions. He can hold. The Banelings are not exploding for whatever reason.
Okay.
Terrible. That was god-awful by TargA. I don't know what he was doing there, but one or the other, Diestar has secured himself. Still equal harvesters against the 3 orbitals. TargA is putting up his 3rd hatchery. He has started drone production. He has pretty decent creep spread going. He did get those additional queens. He wasn't like completely all in, but it's an uphill road now. Those 3 orbitals just cannot be underestimated.
No. Stim's done now as well, and Diestar is actually back into full-on production mode, and TargA takes that 3rd base, is well behind tech-wise. He's now only just starting his lair, and Stim is already finished. There's 4 more barracks going up behind this for Diestar, so he's had quite enough of this nonsense, and also has 8 Hellions, which is, in fact, now 10 Hellions. Huge amounts of them, knowing that all his opponent's got is Ling Baneling, so Hellions are absolutely fine in this position. It's not even a Roach Warren up here by the looks of it for TargA. He's going straight for lair, so these Hellions are going to gain full map control, one would think, and might even be able to do some damage, but TargA's wall-off is looking pretty solid, so I can't imagine that's going to happen. Another Ling run-by comes in here. These Lings are all going to die, but they might be able to get a few mules.
Yeah, nice catch by Diestar. He didn't really have any more units back at home, so if he hadn't had those Hellions back, playing a little bit defensively, that circling attack could have actually done
everything
quite a
there,
bit.
actually. Really, really good.
Yeah, really nice by him. And with that, it means that there's like 10, 12 Zerglings on the field against the 10-some Hellions of Diestar. So it's going to be really, really hard for TargA to take any control of his 3rd base. He's going to have to be producing Zerglings, and that means he's not going to be producing drones, and he really needs to play catch-up on economy. Like, if we look at the harvester count, he is up 10 harvesters, but that does not tell the real story with those
full mules
in play.
Yeah, absolutely not. So, in reality, the income looks more like that. It's actually extremely even, with Diestar actually having the slight edge now as a result of these mules. So, he is absolutely fine. He's not too worried at all. He's even moving out his 3rd CC because he has full map control right now. So, he feels that he's safe in doing so. And he's right. He absolutely can do that. The Spire is on the way here, but Diestar's still got another couple of minutes of being able to do really whatever he wants. and then he's going to actually have to deal with those Mutalisks. But the Marine production is going to be in full swing quite shortly. He's just finished the reactors on all of those barracks, so he's going to be building 8 Marines. In fact, yeah, 9 Marines perhaps at a time. It depends if he wants to throw some Marauders in there. He is going to bring up a couple of Widow Mines into this as well, so it looks like he's set up absolutely fine for TargA's next move.
Yeah, it certainly should be. He really just, he's in such great shape. He has double upgrades. They're exactly on par with TargA's. He'll have 1-1 before any big engagements happens. He already has 5 barracks along with 4 reactors in production. He's got that third CC basically running before TargA's third base is running. TargA couldn't have any drones at his third base for so long because those Hellions give Diestar such good map control. I don't know, it's going to be tough. TargA has a lot of Zerglings. That's one thing to be noted. He could go for a really big muted Link Bane attack as soon as the mutas pop, try and bust that third base. But TargA's Baneling speed is actually quite delayed, so that's going to make it very, very difficult if he wants to go for something like that. TargA does have very good creep spread. That's one real thing he has going for him. But just his production, his economy, his upgrades, his tech, everything is pretty significantly far behind that early Baneling attack. That kind of build is just so... Like, you have to make so much happen. It's really hard to make it happen.
And it certainly didn't. TargA did not do a great job with that. I mean, the last Baneling bust in particular was just kind of silly. You got all his Banelings trapped behind 2 of his own Zerglings, which is a little embarrassing, and didn't really do the job. It gave Diestar all the time in the world to actually prepare to defend that, and by the time the Hellions were lined up, there was no way in a million years it was going to attack. But now Diestar bringing it to TargA, and is able to take out a couple of Banelings. Decent detonation comes off there. The Mutalisks come in from the side right here. The Marine count is not massive yet, especially with more Banelings on the way, but it is forcing, before the Baneling speed is done, a defense from TargA, which did not work out well. Diestar continues to push in right here. This third mineral line is looking like it's going to get gutted very, very quickly indeed. Queen's taking damage as well. Even the macro hatches out here and exposed, so this is certainly not good. More Lings are spawning and trying to surround Diestar, but he continues to fire. He does still have a couple of Hellions left in there, and eventually it looks like TargA's going to clean this up, but he did lose his third base. He does have kind of his weird backup third base sitting there that can actually be used to mine at a slightly longer distance, but that was a bit unfortunate that TargA was not able to... Oh, no! That was most of the Banelings going off from a Widow Mine hit there. TargA must be hating life at this point, and so much for that counter-aggression.
Yeah, the small saving grace is a Zergling counterattack at the same time actually cleared out all of the SCVs and forced a lift off of the third base. But Diestar, he's just in full production mode. He's rolling on through here. And TargA just doesn't have enough stuff. He's actually down in supply, which of course never where you want to be as a Zerg. And kind of sloppy engagements by Diestar, but it's really not going to matter at this point. He has so much stuff, he can just kind of steamroll through. And TargA being pretty sloppy in his own right. He was complaining about lag before, so you have to kind of wonder if that's the case. But he's just been sending his units in piecemeal, a handful of units at a time, and he does manage to clear this up.
Yeah, I think really poor Widow Mine detonations do help him out a lot there, and TargA the splits from Diestar not so great either. So that was good. He was able to at least shove the Terran player back from his third base there and clean up a few of those Widow Mines as well. But Diestar's going to continue to pile on this pressure. 3 base production here. Maybe he could... in fact, I was going to say, maybe he should get some more barracks, and he builds 5 more. So I guess he is thinking the same, that he could really start rally 2-2 Marines in a big way. Diestar continues to try and apply the aggression to the economy of TargA here. More Mutalisks coming in. Some pretty poor Widow Mine connections, but some also pretty poor Baneling connections. Eventually pushes this back, but fairly costly for TargA, who is really far down in army supply here.
Yeah, as always, the problem is here, he's trading his Mutas and his Banelings for the Marines. He's not taking out the Medevacs or the Widow Mines, which means this is just eventually going to go in Diestar's favor as long as he can hold it off. And he's pushing through here pretty quickly to do that early game advantage. And 2-2 is about to finish. Right now, a bit of an upgrade advantage for TargA. He got his 2-2 slightly faster. 2-2 is about to finish for Diestar as well. And if nothing else, I think that should spell the end of it.
I certainly think so. This Marine force will be cleaned up with the Broodlings assisting, so there was enough links to actually make that happen. And again, the Widow Mines are not getting the best connections outside of that one hit with the Banelings there, but with 5 additional barracks in production here, I think things are going to go the way of the Terran at this point. TargA's not able to apply any aggression to his opponent. He's playing purely defensively, and he might be getting the better end of some of these trades, but it doesn't matter because Diestar just has more stuff. And now the army supply is 74 to 34.
There's a complete Widow Mine field set up there. Every time an engagement happens, the Widow Mines and the Medevacs survive. Even if the Marines are dying, you can replace those very, very easily, especially now that he's running off of like 9 barracks. and the third hatchery will fall, and that should be the end of it. TargA's holding on because, I don't know, he doesn't like losing or something, but there's not anything he can actually do here.
Very strange player, the guy that doesn't like losing, I tend to find.
I know, it's so weird.
I don't really understand that. You know, I personally absolutely love it. It seems a really, really good thing to do.
Diestar actually moving back to check the corner base. That, of course, is not there. TargA is continuing to try and expand around the map. I'm not sure what he really sees happening here. He has about 6 mutas against a big, massive 2/2 Marines with Widow Mines.
Well, you've got to give TargA some props for his gumption at any rate, but this is... Oh, actually, never mind. That was a Baneling hit and a half right there. So he is actually able to push a lot of that back, and the Widow Mines connect mostly with the Marines more so than anything else, but there's actually no military units left for the Zerg now. And it doesn't matter how many Marines you kill, there's way more coming your way, and there's the GG. Diestar powering forward with 10 barracks production on 3 bases, going up to 3-3, and TargA's failed Baneling bust puts him behind for the rest of the game, and that, as they say, is that.
Yeah, that's been the story of TVZ throughout HOTS. It's hard enough when you're on equal footing, but if you're behind, just because he was constantly trading gas units for the Marines, he was never taking out the Widow Mines or the Medevacs. And if you can't take those out, you're going to lose long term no matter how well you take out the Marines, just because you can keep making Marines, you can't keep making Banelings at that rate. Nicely played by Diestar, but it really just, I don't know. I don't know why anyone still does those like Bane attacks. They work sometimes, but it's just so much on your opponent messing up, more so than you being able to actually do anything. And, well, credit to Diestar for not messing up at least.
Yeah, he played rock solid. And you were talking earlier about him being a textbook Terran. That's exactly what he is, and funnily enough, that's exactly what he needed to be in order to deal with TargA there. If he got super greedy, then TargA would have been able to win, certainly. He was a little greedy with that third CC, but he wasn't massively so. He did at least prepare for the possibility that TargA would go after him, which ended up happening. And then TargA flubbed the attack up the ramp, and that resulted in some fairly dodgy Baneling connections and a lot of waste. You know, threw away those 3 Banelings before into the supply depot for no reason, and it could have been a better, more focused all-in, I think, that would have actually worked out. But after it failed, well, we saw it just went the way of the Terran and never stopped.
Certainly. In a way, making that early third CC is almost the best thing you can do against that, because unit-wise, anything you can get out in time is barely going to help. An extra couple of Marines, maybe 1 Marauder. It's really what you need to defend that is buildings and Hellions, and having the third orbital just means that you don't need to defend quite as well because you have 3 meals to fall back on. So really, it seems like it's kind of greedy. It seems like you shouldn't be putting down a third command center in response to an all-in, but it's actually one of the better things you can do.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. We're going to take a short break, and no doubt a lot of you would like to go visit the bathroom or whatever, so we invite you to do just that, although I'd recommend you do it separately. We'll be coming back with Diestar versus one of the 2 remaining Norwegian players, either Snute or Eiki, and we're interested to see who that will be. We'll find out right after this break. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Nation War, and it's going to be Diestar versus Eiki. Very much the battle of the unknowns here for many people.
Probably the 3rd player from both teams. Diestar looked pretty good in that last one, and Snute, I don't know if I'm going to be able to call him Snute. I didn't even realize there was any like discussion over his name. Snute seemed pretty fond of Eiki in the pre-match interview. But yeah, the battle of the underdogs here, I would say either of these would be surprising if they beat, you know, the Snute or the Nerchio of the other lineup.
I would certainly tend to agree with that, but both of them could surprise. We will find out as we go in here on Frost LE. Ladies and gentlemen, in the red trunks to the southwest position representing Team Poland, who evens up the series 1 apiece in this best-of-5 nation war, it is Diestar from Team Millennium. Versus his opponent to the southeast position, relatively unknown, I believe, playing for Carnage at this point, and also, of course, representing Team Norway. In the blue trunks playing Protoss, it is Eiki.
Diestar certainly looked very, very good in that last game, and to be fair to him, he plays a very generic hero, which isn't necessarily like a bad thing, but it's very hard to be successful as a generic player unless you're like extremely good, because everyone knows what you're going to do. And when you start to get any kind of recognition in WCS or any kind of high-profile things, everyone just knows exactly how you're going to play, and they know exactly how to deal with it. And it's really hard to come back from that kind of disadvantage unless you're absurdly good. So Diestar can be very, very good, and just given his style, not have a whole lot of success. And then here in this environment, maybe he's playing against people who don't know him as well. Maybe he hasn't been studied as much because he hasn't been too successful recently. So Diestar certainly could be the better without us knowing it. Although he is against someone else we don't know, so I guess that's kind of a meaningless statement.
It's a little difficult to deal with, isn't it? Because Diestar may very well be quite active in European Cups, but Eiki doesn't play in all that many of them, and those he does play in, he doesn't have a huge amount of results in. His biggest result was in a Norwegian-only LAN. So it's hard to really know just how good Eiki actually is, or indeed what Diestar's performance will actually be against Protoss. Historically, he's been pretty good, but that was a long time ago, and things do change rather rapidly, particularly lately. It seems that a lot of Terrans are struggling with Protoss, at least outside of Pro League at any rate, where Protoss are actually getting their asses handed to them at the moment.
I am just absolutely shocked by the Pro League statistics. I genuinely thought, like, a biased balance winding, it's hard to put that completely aside, but it genuinely felt like Protoss was by far the strongest race in the current meta game. I haven't watched enough of their Pro League games, but I know how badly they're doing, and I'm very surprised.
Let me just put it this way. My fantasy Pro League team is called Protoss Balance, and had 4 Protoss in it that were mostly CJ Enters, so I think you can imagine how badly I'm currently doing.
We're actually on a very similar mindset there, because when I did the votes for the on-gaming end-of-year thing, I actually put my team of the year as CJ, because even though they hadn't been doing very well in like the team leagues, I really felt like their individual players were some of the best, and they're great at grooming talent. And now they're like 1-3 in Pro League or something.
Yeah. So, well, at least they're not doing as badly as Prime, so that's a plus.
There is that.
It was just wonderful. If you wanted to pick Prime as your team for Fantasy Pro League, it cost you 0 points to do it, which was quite handy. So, that was a cheap one. Oh my. Well, whatever the case, we currently have an expansion on the way up for Diestar. He's going to follow this up with 2 barracks relatively quickly. So
2 barracks, and he's also starting out with a reactor to get double Marines out very quickly. So he's going pretty heavy Bioforce.
Yep.
Which is the less standard of all of the openings during Hadoop. Reaper Expand, obviously one of the most common, but often going straight into Quick Factory and Starport.
Yes.
Get Widow Mines going, get drops going, get harassment going. And if nothing else, getting a Tech Lab for a quick stim timing or something like that. There goes the Tech Lab on the second barracks, but still 3 barracks production that early with a lot of Marines off the reactor.
Yeah.
That could lead to, obviously, a slightly delayed, but very, very powerful. It'd be interesting to see if he goes for a Combat Shield here to make up, because he's going to have a lot of Marines, so Combat Shield makes a very big difference.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to do a very quick stim timing or anything like that, but he's getting 2 Tech Labs, so it'll probably be both upgrades and just a later, very heavy timing.
I'm a little bit worried for Eiki here. Going straight 1 gate Robo after the Nexus, and then the Forge as well. Still no sign of any kind of other production. This could end up actually being really nasty for him if he ends up with a ton of stuff on his front door. Admittedly, in Wings of Liberty, this would have been a much bigger deal, but with the Mothership Core and the Photon Overcharge, maybe not so much. Although, even with enough units, you can still, you can still kill the Nexus. You can just barrel down on the thing, even with combat shields. So, I don't know. It's hard to say whether or not any kind of aggression would really work here.
Yeah, I don't think Eiki has crossed the point of no return yet. He's still completely capable of holding it off, especially because it is looking like it's going to be more of a delayed attack because his stim does start later. He is going for a more unit-heavy attack.
Yeah.
So depending on what Eiki does from here, if he adds gateways, if he produces the right units out of his robo, he will be able to hold it off. It's not like it's going to be an attack that's coming in a minute or two when he's going to have 3 stalkers and maybe an immortal or anything like that. And he is going for a Robo Bay. So this is all going to come down to Diestar's attack timing. He's now getting Combat Shield, so he's definitely looking to attack right as Stim and Combat Shield finish. He has those lined up nicely. They should finish around the same time. And that's going to be, I don't know, the first Colossus is going to be like just finishing then, I think. So this is going to be a pretty close timing on both sides.
I still think Eiki's got super greedy with his tech. I mean, he put down the Robo Bay before the second gateway, and he puts down a Twilight Council as well. He's throwing down every possible tech option in the book here on no units. Now Eiki is going to, with the Observer, spot, oh dear, that's a lot of barracks and you just started your factory. Oh dear, those tech labs are certainly running things, and oh god, look at that army. So he immediately brings in a sentry just to make sure that they can't waltz up the ramp there. But he has 2 Stalkers, a Sentry, and a Mothership Core. And the extra gateways aren't even done yet. The first Colossus is on its way. It's not going to be out before Diestar's attack hits.
No, he might be able to buy time with his Nexus overcharge thing, but he has 4 units against so much stuff, and this is not a normal Terran stim timing. This is a 3 barracks reactor first. I have a lot of units with both stim and combat shield timing.
Yep.
And he might not even have to wait for the Nexus cannon to dissipate. He might be able to just charge in there and focus it down. He has so much firepower.
And I think that's kind of what he should do.
Colossus out, at least.
Yeah, the Colossus is done. It does not have the extra range. Diestar would certainly want to move back. He's actually trying to focus it down as best he can here, but it turns out 4 units is, at the moment, enough because of this photon overcharge here. Diestar's continuing to try and focus this down, but apparently you don't need units as Protoss anymore.
That was just absolutely clutch timing on the Colossus. I don't know if he had that timed out, if this is a build Diestar does a lot, or a build that's really common amongst Terran in Europe. And Eiki knew exactly what was going on, and he had that timed out perfectly, or he just got really, really lucky. But that Colossus getting out absolutely
just
saved
the
him.
right time.
He was just completely dead if that had not happened.
Absolutely
As
true.
is back at home, Diestar just now starting up his first medevac production, and he absolutely has to start Vikings up right now because there's already 2 Colossus out, which means he's going to be significantly lacking in terms of the medevacs. This is the counter side to that big investment Diestar made early in that big unit timing. That looked like a really scary timing. It seemed like it might have given him a free win, but it costs a lot to make that kind of investment into an army, and he's significantly lacking in terms of tech. And he's just starting his first upgrade now. So he's still at 0-0, whereas Eiki already has +1 armor.
Well, it looks like the tech greed of Eiki is very much paid off at this point. So unless a bad engagement happens, there is a pretty large Marauder force here from Diestar. So it is certainly possible that those Colossus would be in a bad position and get picked off. And they're a little bit close to the front here, but Diestar does not want to engage, so especially not with the force fields there. That was a bit too much of a risk. So he loses a Marauder, and that is then pushed back. And is going to have to wait to get some Vikings up. He only has 2 medevacs, so I have to wonder. Eiki's already up to 3 Colossus, going up to 4 and Blink.
He has Thermal Lance as well now, so there's absolutely no way he's going to get attacked anytime soon. And I think he actually just has enough of an advantage that he can go Blink Stalker Colossus, and Diestar's not going to be able to have enough medevacs to keep himself alive, and Vikings to kill the Colossus amongst all the Blink Stalkers. It was just such a good early game for Eiki. He was very, very greedy, and Diestar was quite aggressive, and Eiki managed to survive, which of course leads to a very, very big mid-game advantage. Once he gets the 4th Colossus, I think he's just going to be able to attack, move, and win if he wants to.
Yeah,
it kind of looks
so.
like he wants to. He's already starting to posture out on the map.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't he? Even if Vikings start to come into production now, 4 Vikings does not kill 4 Colossus, not quick enough. That entire army dies before that. Unless, of course, we see some really poor force field placement like we just saw from Eiki. 3 force fields going down, killing nothing but a single Marauder, which was not that great. And he does only have 2 sentries with him with low energy, so the risk is, I suppose, he gets Marauder flanked and gets his Colossus taken out quickly. The Marauder force is pretty heavy. There's been 3 produced at a time. He's about to go up to 15 Marauders with +1, which will definitely help against a Stalker Colossus heavy composition like this. So Eiki's still playing with fire a little bit, but that is still 4 Colossus, and we should never underestimate that.
He's also getting charged a lot and continuing to upgrade, so he will have a fallback. He's continuing to warp in Stalkers. You're right, that is a very Marauder-heavy army. He should be considering more Zealots in his composition. But I think he just has enough firepower that he can attack and move through it. He's not bringing his Mothership Core along. He does lack force fields. It would be really, really nice to have the Mothership Core with that army, have the double time stops available to help out in the positioning battle. Not really sure why he's not bringing that along. That would help his army out significantly. I think with time stops, there's absolutely no way Diestar can engage. Even without it, it's going to be really, really tough.
He might be a bit scared of drops. I mean, that's a possibility, especially with a fairly small, reasonably sort of front-facing army there from the Protoss player. It is possible that drops would come in to do a little bit of damage, but...
Yeah, he does have absolutely nothing back at home.
Yes.
That's a reasonable fear to have.
Yeah. More tech coming out because Eiki apparently doesn't have enough of that. Templar Archives being added on top of that, so he can add in Storm, he can add in Archons if he so desires. The Colossus count is currently at 5. Viking count's at 12 now, though, so... If there was an opportunity, I feel, for Eiki to attack, it has long since passed, and he'll now just try and be defensive.
Looks like he doesn't want to take any risks. He's just... Diestar's actually the one choosing to attack here, and I'm not sure about that.
Well, he can kill an awful lot of Colossus. I mean, he had enough Vikings there, at least on the first couple of waves, to one-shot the Colossus. Another one's going to go down here, but Diestar is going to lose an awful lot making this happen. He might be able to get to those other Colossus, but it doesn't look like it. With a very nice time warp in the middle of that army, we're going to see a Protoss clean up very nicely here, and Diestar's army supply plummets. And Eiki's thinking, you know what, I might go for you now. All of the Vikings are dead. There's 4 Vikings in production here, but what could absolutely cripple the Terran player here is a switch to Templar.
If he doesn't attack now, he's the most patient Protoss player I've ever seen. He just wiped an army and has 3 Colossus left, plus like 7 Gateway production. He absolutely should just attack move. There's no way he can lose. That wasn't the best engagement by Eiki. He didn't really control his Colossus at all. He just kind of attack moved everything with some decent spell placement. But that early game advantage is easily carrying him through so much stuff.
Evidently.
He's adding in Archons, putting down a forward pylon, so I would imagine he's going to be going in for the kill here soon.
Yeah.
But behind it, also playing very smart, establishing a 4th base. He has all the techs going. He has double forge running as well for upgrades, so he has plenty to fall back on, even if he doesn't manage to kill Diestar here. And Diestar, not a whole lot of stuff to work with.
No. Ghost Academy is on the way. Archons have now been added on into the mix, and we might even see Storm a little bit later on. But +2/+2 with a ball like that is going to be very difficult for the Terran player to stop, especially with a reduced army. So I don't think this is going to be working out too well for Diestar. Eiki is now moving into position and will be attacking. And I don't know if Diestar's going to be able to hold that. That is a lot of Protoss stuff. He's added in a lot more Zealots into the composition, which is going to handily shut down these 18 Marauders to 23 Marines. That's a very heavy Marauder ratio, which is nice against Storm. You can kind of man-mode your way through it, but against this many Colossus and that many Charging Zealots with those upgrades, that becomes a little bit dicier. Maybe Eiki just waits for 3-3 and then goes and adds Storm into the comp, but I would say that Diestar is in a rough spot right now.
Actually, adding cannons out in the center of the map, just being very, very careful. Eiki is being very careful, and in this case, is actually good for him because he almost has a 3-3 upgrades, and Diestar has actually stopped upgrading. He went for that 1-1 timing and never even started 2-2, never bothered.
Yeah.
So time is actually on Eiki's side, but he has a big enough advantage. He could just kind of attack and win. And Diestar, kind of feeling the sense of urgency, just pulls SCVs and going for one last engagement.
Indeed, and Eiki looks like he is going to absolutely murder this Terran force. Storm coming down to finish it off. That is not even close. Diestar just got Protossed in a really big way, and Eiki's now just going to go for the kill. There's the GG, and, well, that was an impressive performance there from the up-and-comer.
Yeah, really, really nice build from him. I am very curious how much of that was planned and how much of that was luck, but the timing's just worked out absolutely perfectly for him. To be fair, Diestar's build, there's a reason you don't see it too much. Putting that much into early aggression against the Protoss when they have force fields, time stop, planetary nexus. I don't know, it's just, that's not a good gamble to take. And from that lead, Eiki, I mean, he went quick Colossus, he had a quick Forge going, he put up like 4 gateways and Twilight Council as well. He was just investing in so many things while Diestar was doing nothing but making 3 barracks tier 1. And when that attack just does nothing like that, I don't know, it's so hard to come back from that. But props to Eiki, he played it out absolutely perfectly, but it was really on the backbone of that build order advantage he had.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. It worked out well for him. It was an incredibly greedy build tech-wise. Going all the way up to Colossus on a single gate is usually not something you really see.
A single gate and 2 stalkers. It's not even like he was building up sentries to have force field or anything. It was actually 2 stalkers and 3 techs and a bunch of gateways and an upgrade.
Pretty much, yeah. And hell, I suppose if you hold from that position, you get in such a ridiculous spot. I mean, we're bearing in mind that Colossus were out before the starport even started building. Mm-hmm. So that was not really going to go so well for the Terran player. But you're right, it was definitely well timed out. And I do wonder if they run into each other from time to time and whether or not this is a build that's actually happening a little bit more on Europe and this is maybe a bit of a meta switch. You know, we hear complaints from Terran players about the state of Terran versus Protoss right now. Maybe there is an adaptation that says, okay, well, there is a way to crack that planetary nexus. And this is what you need to do in order to make that happen. And perhaps it is, you know, a bit of a counter-meta from the Protoss. I don't know. It's hard to say. Especially in Europe, it's actually not a scene that over the last couple of months I've really been able to keep too much track on. So it could very well be absolutely anything. But what can I say? Eiki pulled that one out quite nicely. And that then leaves us on match point here.
Which puts him against Mana, I believe, right?
It does, yes. Very much so. So a bit of a PvP, which definitely not Mana's strongest matchup. So Eiki could actually take this for Norway, which I think would be, again, a bit of an upset for a lot of people.
Oh, that definitely would be. I was not expecting that at all. And Eiki, I don't really feel like he was even tested that last match. he won on the back of his build order, but everything else was absolutely clean. Like, the only flaw in that game from him that I saw was the fact that he was a bit greedy. His engagement wasn't perfect, but I don't know, nothing ever looked like there was any possible way he could lose. So it's kind of hard to tell from a game like that how good he was, but he certainly was not bad at all. And Mana has been kind of unproven in the last few months. He's been on a bit of a downswing. So, I don't know, it's kind of looking good for the underdog here.
I certainly think so. Let's see. Even if Eiki goes down, that still leaves Snute, which is, it's pretty good. I've got to say, Snute's ZVP has not been looking that great lately, so it may very well not go well for him, but regardless, it does give a nice buffer to Norway, which is perhaps something they weren't even expecting to have at this stage.
Yeah, Eiki is running he just had a really, really good, easy win, so if he has any jitters, they should be worked out. He doesn't have to worry about being the last hope for his team. He does have Snute, the captain, behind him, and in theory, at least, the best player from Norway to back him up. And I don't know. There's just a lot of good things going for him. He should be in a pretty good place.
I think so. This is a really, really good position for Norway and, of course, Eiki to be in. And let's see if he can take a PvP. It's going to be on Habitation Station. And, of course, it leaves the last remaining player for Team Poland, that being Mana, to carry the torch for the rest of this. He's got to win a PvP and a PvZ who wants to bring this back for his team here.
Habitation Station, the gold bases shouldn't matter too much in PvP, at least not early on. And by the time it gets later, you're more worried about gas units anyway. But the other thing that people overlook is this map has an absurdly short rush distance, and that certainly can matter in PvP.
That is very true indeed. So here we go, folks, to the northeast position. The last man standing here for Team Poland. In the red trunks playing Protoss, it is Mana. Versus his opponent to the northwest position. In the blue trunks playing Protoss, it is Carnage Eiki.
I'm curious if Eiki is capable of cheese or willing to cheese, because that was a very, very macro-oriented game he played in the last game. And even when he had a couple of opportunities to go for the kill, he instead opted to fall back, build another base, continue to tech and upgrade and whatnot. He didn't, like, you'll get cheesy players who are willing to do greedy builds. It didn't feel like that. That felt like a macro player playing a macro game.
Yes.
And that might not translate very well to PvP, and particularly on this map. Because like I said, everyone looks at this map and sees the gold base as the feature, the map. But the rush distance is actually just, like, absurdly short. And that could matter here, PvP. And Mana is completely capable of doing a 4-gate or just any kind of all-in. He's been around, he knows every build. He's very much so a build order-oriented player who can follow it up with a good macro game as well.
Yeah.
But from the absolute no knowledge of Eiki that I have, I would say that Mana is the one who's a little bit more diverse and more able to adapt to a strange map like this.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And I would say that looking at Eiki's control in that last game and having seen Mana's control in the hundreds of games previous to that, I'd say that Mana has an edge if it comes down to anything micro-orientated.
Yeah, Eiki's battle control was not fantastic. There was definitely something to be desired from his class control. But to be fair, he could just attack, move, and still win easily. So maybe he wasn't, he wasn't completely focused on it, because it was very clear that he was winning those battles from the start. There was nothing he could have really done to lose them. So you can't quite fault him right off the bat for that. We have build orders starting to develop. Mana actually went for a double gas immediately. Eiki is going for a second gas as well, slightly delayed. Cybercore's around the same time, a little bit faster, obviously. Cybercore before second gas for Eiki, so a little bit quicker for him. No 4 gates this time, which is not surprising, but we did see one in the previous PvP.
Mana with the light probe harass, which generally doesn't get an awful lot done, but I don't know, he's working on that gas probe. He's actually doing all right. He almost, if he gets that, then I think we can safely say who has the better control here, but Eiki is not going to allow that to happen. Mana darting in and out and seeing what he can do there, but he hangs around his opponent's base and is incredibly annoying, gets to spot all of the timings, gets to see what's going on there, and in the back of that, throws down that Twilight Council and is continuing to mine from both gas. In fact, he's so greedy for gas, he's putting a 4th probe in the extractor, so there we go. Oh, he's fixed it.
Yeah, that was even on the close extractor, and that was definitely a mistake. Sometimes you'll get extractors that are a little bit further away, and you really need 4 to mine them absolute efficiency, but
Not in this case.
No one actually does that. It's almost never worth it unless you have just like an absurd surplus of workers. Oh, a really early Nexus coming down from Eiki here. This, so I guess he is just a greedy player through and through. But the Dark Shrine already coming up for mana. The Mothership Core is out on the map and kind of headed over towards the main from Eiki. But Mana, of course, well aware of the potential of that. He has the Dark Shrine at the very back of his base. Should be able to deny scouting on that for sure.
Yeah, and Mana's going to be pretty happy with what he sees here. He sees a Gateway and then a Robo, so not quite as early on that. Robo will be done by the time the Dark Shrine warp-in comes in, though, so we'll see. The thing is that if he warps in multiple Dark Templar and he doesn't manage to hold them at the natural ramp and those DTs start to split up, then that one Observer is not going to be enough to keep track of it. But we will see. It might do damage. Dark Shrine is going to be up in about 30 in-game seconds time. Mana, however, does not actually have a pylon down to warp in with.
No, he doesn't. It's actually Eiki who put down a forward pylon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was preparation for later harassment, or if it was just mind games, hoping that Mana would think he was trying to be aggressive instead of taking just a very, very early second Nexus. Dark Shrine is finishing, but there's still... The forward pylon is just now starting for Mana. That's really badly timed.
It's not that close either. I mean, do you think that's deliberate for Mana? Could there be a reason for that based on what he scouted, or is that just a mistake?
No, that's just a mistake. Like, timing is absolutely of the essence. His warp gate has been finished. I don't know, his second and third gateway were kind of late, but again, I would just chalk that up to a mistake. If you're going to build like this, you need to be there. Because, look, the Observer is already out. So
yeah, Eiki just scouts the Dark Shrine there with a Hallucinated Phoenix as well, so... Yeah, jig is up, I would think. Mana's trying to go in there and do something, and again, the force field of control of Eiki, I would say, kind of fails him, but he actually didn't have 2 force fields worth of energy, so he really didn't have too much of a choice there. But, well, this DT aggression's pretty much over, and Mana's going straight into a Robo. He may be able to do some DT drop a little bit later, perhaps, but outside of that, that was something of a dismal failure.
Absolutely. The Nexus of Mana starts as the Nexus from Eiki has already been finished for a good 30 seconds. They're on pretty much equal unit count. The Robo is just much, much faster for Eiki. He already has Immortal production on the way. Mana doesn't really have much going for him. He already has a Twilight Council, but he's not researching Blink. He's not going to be able to make anything happen that way. This is not a particularly good Blink map. Not a whole lot of surface area to take advantage of. Actually, I don't know. Can you jump into the main from the gold base? It looks like you might be able to.
It is possible, actually.
Either way, that doesn't really matter because he's not going for it, so he's not going to be able to make anything happen there. Eiki just headed up for... He's actually putting down cannons in his main, so he's being very, very safe. He's a little bit worried about that DT drop you mentioned. That's not going to be able to do anything. And he's headed straight up to Colossus, so he seems... This is kind of weird. Usually you don't see relatively unknown players being very, very macro-safe gameplay-oriented, but he seems to be kind of the epitome of that, if anything.
This is pretty impressive. Up to this point, honestly, he's doing a really good job, and it looks like he's read it perfectly. The DT drop is what's coming in here by the looks of it with the Warp Prism. He may decide to just go for a Zealot Warp in, but he wants to make that Dark Shrine work for him in some way, and so far it's done absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. With that cannon in the main, it's going to make it hard. It's going to make it hard for him to do anything else either.
Yeah.
The more production time he spends trying to make that Dark Shrine work, he's just falling further behind. He hasn't even started his Robo Bay yet, and the first Colossus is already out for Eiki, and he's just matching the Immortal count now. That Warp Prism is headed in. He's warping in DTs, and so that's not even a Zealot Warp in. Zealot Warp in, obviously you're not investing too much, but DTs, that's just more and more gas gone. The cannon's already there. There's still an Observer with the army, so I don't see him making anything happen at all with this.
No, he's going to run right into that cannon, and he's able to do a little bit of damage. Wow. Jeez, talk about a little bit of overkill. I mean, that was US military level right there. Village just gets flattened by the mother of all bombs, a Colossus, a cannon, and a Photon Overcharge, saying absolutely not to that Dark Templar. So that is not happening whatsoever, and I think that Mana has very clearly realized at this point this is not a good idea, and is now going into Templar Archives, which is a bit of an interesting choice, honestly. And if he wanted Archons, he could already warp in DTs for that.
I think he knows. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. He obviously knows he's not going to be able to catch up in Colossus count. He's not going to be able to play Colossus Wars and win that battle. So he is headed for Most likely, Archon Immortal Zealot kind of composition. He is getting Charge Lot going. He has upgrades coming. I believe the upgrades... No, he doesn't really have much of an advantage in terms of upgrades. He just doesn't have a whole lot going for him.
Mana drops 2 Immortals. I suppose you can't get it done with 1 DT. You can get it done with 2 Immortals, and he's focusing fire now on the pylons and is disabling some of this key tech, which is a pretty neat trick.
That's nice. It slows down the upgrade. It does give Mana a bit of an upgrade advantage because they were very close. Obviously, killing off that pylon is going to delay the +2 for Eiki. He's continuing Immortal production, so he's going to have a lot of them to work with. And if he manages to drop them in and actually snipe some Colossus during the battle, that could work out well for him. Because without the Colossus, Eiki's army will be significantly inferior to the Zealot, Templar, Archon kind of composition that Mana's going for. So maybe he's going to have that to work with, but he can't afford to spend robo production time on another War Prism. He really needs all those Immortals out. So it's going to be very hard to actually engage if Eiki's control is good. But that's the one thing we have actually seen Eiki kind of fail at before. Yeah. He has not had perfect control.
This is kind of cool. You've got to admit, what Mana's currently doing right now, knocking out pylons, trying to slow down production so he's able to catch up, using the War Prism and double Immortal drops to hold Eiki back at his base. It's nice, and it is actually allowing Mana to start to get back into this. He even actually has a supply lead right now.
Yeah, I find that kind of surprising. He is going for a more mass unit kind of composition, so that it's more efficient supply on Eiki's side. But really, given how much faster his expansion and everything was, and the failed tech on Mana's part, I'm surprised that's happening at all. But we do see more gateways coming up for Eiki. It looks like he is gearing up for an attack. He has his own Templar Archive, so he can mix in his own Archons as well, which will help pretty significantly against the very Zealot-heavy composition Mana is aiming for. This is going to be kind of tough. That's a really scary Protoss ball coming out.
That is true. 5 Immortals, though, for Mana. So if he can actually focus down the Colossus, then he will actually be in a really good position there. The Archon should be able to handle the Zealots fairly well. And even if he adds something like Storm into that mix, that'll work pretty well, too. DT's being thrown in just for the hell of it. I assume those are being warped into morph to Archons, honestly. The Warp Prism is back. No, actually, he's warping a DT into the base, but another cannon was built to replace the one that went down, so that absolutely did not work out for him there. But this is going to be a really interesting engagement, and perhaps we might see Mana's control come into play, because like you said, Eiki's not so great up to this point. That's really been his one weakness.
And Mana does have very, very good control. But it's just going to be so hard, because this is a very tight map. There's not a whole lot of room to maneuver. That makes the Colossus build infinitely better. It's going to be so hard to actually get the Immortals to engage on the Colossus. And Eiki smartly warping, hallucinating in some additional Colossus just to help protect against that. That's a lot of Protoss stuff.
That it very much is a lot of Protoss stuff on either side here, and currently the focus fire is not really managing to bring down those Colossus, and Eiki barrels through that without too much of a problem. The remaining Immortals just run for the hills to the south of the map. That third base is looking pretty forfeit at this point, and it looks like we are in fact going to see the unknown Eiki head through with a 2-kill against Poland, which is a very impressive result. GG, Mana is out. And, of course, that means that Poland falls to the losers bracket where they'll be facing off against Spain, and Norway takes a 3-1.
That was really impressive by Eiki. Mana took that third base. He knew he was still a little bit behind. He had to make something happen to try and kind of come back. If he established that third base, gets himself an economic advantage, maybe he can work with that. Eiki didn't panic. Just absolutely perfect timing. Exactly when the Nexus finished, which is exactly when you want to attack against something like that. He just goes in and completely obliterates Mana. Again, he didn't... not perfect unit control. He actually kind of attacked into a flank, but he didn't need it just because his timing and his macro and his build order choices were so good previously. Very impressive from him.
Yeah. That's... Well, there's your breakout performance right there on a big stage. That's good. I mean, that's probably the most viewers that he's had in a long... Well, ever. So, yeah, he can definitely be happy with that result. That was really, really nice. He plays a very greedy style that we don't... I mean, we see Protoss be greedy, especially with the Mothership Core, but that's like another level of greed from him. He really does push his tech really, really hard. He does a lot with very little, and then he makes a powerhouse selection of units. He seems to favor the Colossus, and that seems to work very, very well for him. So I am very impressed by Eiki's performance there.
Protoss can be very greedy with the Mothership Core and still be pretty safe about it. But this was kind of next level stuff. If he starts to get more attention, get more known, he's going to have to tone that down a bit because the stuff he was doing definitely is punishable. But they're good calculated risks to take, especially when you're more of an unknown. Like if your opponent doesn't know that you're playing that kind of thing, it's risky to an extent, but you catch up so quickly because you are so greedy early on, it pays off, and then you have an advantage to work with. So really, really smart play from him. I'm curious to see, I would imagine the other countries are watching this, or at least they will be aware of it, see if they're going to adapt to him very quickly in the next match up against Russia next. And Russia has some very aggressive players. Titan is not going to let you get away with that kind of stuff.
No, he's not.
So that will be an interesting next test for Eiki here.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I wonder what other builds he's got up his sleeve. The fact that he was able to pull off that greedy stuff not once but twice successfully, I have a feeling that then puts Russia in a position where they're looking at that and saying, yeah, we don't really want to let that guy pull that off. He is very punishable. We need to make that happen. We need to find some weaknesses in that because, honestly, I don't think anyone really expected Snute not to come out at all in this series, not to even have to play.
If anything, I would have said Norway is the underdog, and so to not have to use their ace even to win is very, very surprising. I would have 100% said that was going to be Russia against Poland in the winner's bracket.
That would have made sense, wouldn't it? But now we're actually going to see Norway against Russia, which is going to be a little bit interesting. We're going to hold it to the interview, and we're actually going to do it with the MVP of the match that was very clearly Eiki. So I think this is the first time most of you are ever going to get to hear from him. So let's get on the call with him and see what he has to say for himself. Eiki, congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Well, this is the first time that a lot of foreign fans have actually had the chance to really see you play. For the most part, it seems that you play in Norwegian lands, where you recently actually had success against TargA.
Yeah. Yeah, I go to school right now, so I don't really have a lot of time to play. So I mostly play in lands in the vacation time, and yeah, I don't really practice that much in the weekdays, only in the weekends. So that's why I haven't been able to show my skill on the international level yet, I think.
Well, this has been a good opportunity for you to do that so far. What we noticed is that you play almost the next level of really greedy tech rush kind of style. You really rush forward to your chosen tech faster than most Protoss do, and you defend on bare minimal units. In fact, we even saw you go up to Colossus on one gateway. Is that something you commonly do, or is it something that you prepared for this nation war?
It's what I do normally. I have a really well prepared build that I've practiced a lot, so I'm confident in holding anything with it, especially the PvT build. The PvP is kind of random, so I'm good against some builds and bad against others, but the PvT build, even though it looks really scary, as long as I scout well and react perfectly, I can hold anything. And then I'm far ahead, like in that game versus Diestar, I had Colossus before he had even a starport, so I was so far ahead at that point, and I just had to play safe to take the win.
Yeah, he actually went for a 3-barrack stim and combat shield timing, and just as he arrived at your natural, your first Colossus popped out there. Did you have any inkling of what he was actually doing, or was that just kind of a bit of a lucky build order result from you?
No, what happened was when I got to his main with my observer, I saw the 3 barracks, I saw the late factory, I basically saw everything. So what I did was I immediately chrono boosted out Zealots. Colossus, I mean. So I spent all my chrono boost on Colossus, and also worked in an additional sentry and Zealots compared to what I usually do. So I was really well prepared. So yeah, that went really well.
Yeah, it absolutely did. It went as well as you could have possibly expected. I can't even recall if you actually lost a single unit in that fight. I don't think you did. So
maybe like a sentry or a Zealot, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. You lost maybe one gateway unit at the most, and Diestar took a crippling loss in that respect. So that was really well executed, and of course, I don't know what anyone really expected against Mana, but you pulled that off really well. Mana started off with Dark Templar. He was actually very late with these Dark Templar, because he delayed his pylon and his gateway, so that didn't really line up with his Dark Shrine finishing there, but you deflected that very easily. He did a little bit of cute Immortal drop harass, which I liked. He was able to disable some of your upgrades for a little while, but you came back with a very, very Colossus-heavy attack, which dealt with his army really well. And I think that a lot of people were very impressed by that, so very well done. We're going to be going into your next match against Russia, and I've got to ask your opinions on going up against Russia here, because a lot of people would have said, oh, Poland beats Norway easily. Apparently not. But now you go up against Russia, who 3-0'd Spain. So what do you feel about going up against that lineup?
Well, it's going to be really difficult. Titan is really, really good, and they also have Happy, and I don't know who the last player is, but it's a really solid team. So, yeah, it's going to be tough, but I think we can do it after what we showed here.
Yeah, that was a bit of an upset, I think, for a lot of people. So you guys really pulled that one off. Eiki, congratulations. Are there any shout-outs you'd like to give to the fans, the team sponsors, or anything like that before we wrap this interview up?
Yeah, thanks for everyone who's tuning in. It's amazing to have so many viewers on a Nation War. It's amazing to play in one. I also want to shout out to my team, Carnage Esports. They've supported me a lot and helped with practice. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's watching.
All right, Eiki, congratulations on your 2-kill here up against Poland, and we look forward to seeing you in the next match.
Thanks.
All right, there you go, folks. Words from the MVP Eiki there, who played extremely well, very unexpected, and also stated that that was very much a build that he actually does a lot. And the Colossus timing there from him was deliberate after scouting those 3 barracks. So, well, there's a build that might become a little bit popular, and oh god, I hope that it doesn't become popular.
I don't know. To be fair, Protosses just in general, especially in the PvT matchup, have just been so absurdly greedy. Because I completely believe him when he says that's just a very well worked out, well timed out build, and he has experience against everything. Because with good force field usage, good mothership core usage, you can hold off pretty much anything except for a really heavy mass bio attack. Yeah. And that can only come so quickly, because if you have that much stuff, you really want to have stim and combat shields with it. Otherwise, your Marines are just kind of fall apart, and they're not really worth the investment. And that can only come at that timing. So if he has the build where he can have all of that and then have Colossus at that timing, it doesn't really have a whole lot of weaknesses. Maybe holding off quick drops, like quick Widowmine Marine drops as we've seen, something like that could be a bit of a weakness. But yeah, I believe him that that's just a very well timed out, really solid build order that he has to work with.
Yeah, seems to work. It definitely does the job there, and I hope that I don't run into that one on ladder, because that's going to be ugly. I don't know how I deal with that. I think I'd just panic and then stop microing altogether. As soon as I see Colossus, that tends to happen anyway, so...
It seems like even to this day, Terrans see like a quick Nexus and then a quick Robo and a quick Forge, and just your gut reaction is, no, he cannot expand and tech and upgrade off of one Stalker. I'm going to attack him with whatever I have and he's going to die. And then it just doesn't work. But they keep doing it. Like, it's been about a year now. They really need to stop. But, I mean, it's true. You're investing in, like, 3 things that shouldn't keep you alive, and then you stay alive anyway. It feels really wrong to both watch and play against.
It does. It really does.
At some point, they have to realize that they can get away with it. You have to find something else to do.
Yeah, think about it. We shall ask Sho what his advice is. He's been to the dark side. He knows their secrets. Alright, well, we will be going into the next match as soon as we have that available for you. We may be getting on the call with Pomfetude and having a little bit of an update and a debrief on what's gone down so far. Bearing in mind we are in a dual tournament format, which means that the winners match, which will determine who goes on to the playoffs in day 3, will be played between Russia and Norway. And then we've got the losers match, which will be Spain versus Poland, which, again, I think is probably going to be... I mean, that seems on paper to be fairly one-sided in favor of Poland, but then again, from what we just saw, maybe Poland's team is a little shakier than we first thought.
Maybe, but I'm still going to give a pretty big advantage to Poland there. Spain is very much so still a one-man show, and Vortex didn't seem to be in particularly good shape. I think people are talking about him, he's putting more time into studying than Starcraft right now, and could definitely believe it after that performance. And Poland... Nerchio, he went down to a Roche Bane all-in. That can happen to anyone if you get a little bit unlucky, if you're a little bit lackadaisical about your scouting. And then Mana, Eiki played really well. It's hard to fault Mana too much for that. His build wasn't as clean as it could be. Going DT there may be a bit of an unnecessary risk, but Eiki just played really, really well and beat someone else before him, so... And losing to him isn't too much of a discredit to him. And Diestar looked pretty solid. Not amazing, but I would be very surprised if Poland lost that as well.
Yeah, it does definitely seem unlikely. Well, folks, we're going to go to a short break, and then we will either come back with a debrief or with the next series. I will keep you posted. Currently, the French stream is doing an interview with Eiki, if I recall correctly, so we don't know exactly what the follow-up's going to be, but I will keep you posted, and of course you can enjoy some fantastic music. You are watching the O Gaming Nation War, as brought to you by Numeric and Daily Motion in association with O Gaming TV. We'll be right back with some more action here between these fantastic teams.